Welcome to the Women's Money Wisdom Podcast. I'm Melissa Joy, a certified financial planner and the founder of Pearl Planning. My goal is to help you streamline and organize your finances, navigate big money decisions with confidence, and be strategic in order to grow your wealth. As a woman, you work hard for your money, and I'm here to help you make the most of it. Now, let's get into the show. Just a quick note before we dive in. The information that we share is meant to educate and inspire, not serve as personalized financial advice. Everyone's situation is unique, so be sure to consult with your own financial professional for guidance that fits your life. And just so you know, the opinions shared in this podcast are my own and those of my guest, and they don't necessarily represent those of any organizations that I'm affiliated with. For more important disclosures, please go to our webpage at pearlplan.com. Now, let's get started. Welcome back to the Women's Money Wisdom Podcast. I am thrilled today. We're going to be talking about something that I think for many of you is completely out of the box, a new perspective. Hopefully it gets you thinking. We're joined by Sherita Janielle, and she is the epitome of living her best life, according to her, which we love to hear from a woman where they can just say, yep, I've got it figured out for myself. She is a globe-trotting digital nomad who has explored over 45 countries. She is seamlessly balancing her work as a digital marketing manager, more on that later, with a lifestyle of adventure. And she's embracing life after 40. Sherita is unapologetically herself, embodying confidence and authenticity in every aspect of her journey. If your attention is not piqued, I don't know if you're listening. Sherita, welcome to the podcast. This is going to be fun.
Thank you so much for having me, Melissa. I know we said we're going to touch on that later, but we work together on a regular basis. I'm like the manager of this show almost. So
That's right.
It's so funny to be on the other side of it and be involved in it and not just editing and whatnot. So this is exciting. So thank you for having me.
Well, for listeners out there, Sherita makes this podcast possible because she, in the background, in conjunction with the marketing company we work with, Idea to Canner, produces these episodes, gets them out, launches them each week, keeps us on task. And so, but it's time to put Sherita in front of the camera because she also lives an amazing life while doing that. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So tell me a little bit about why we're talking, Sherita. Tell me about how you live.
I will say that this has not always been my life. So I did not wake up like this, as Beyonce says. I've had a very interesting past. So I studied finance. I was a corporate accountant for many years. I lived in New York. I worked as a commercial actress as well. I was a model. I've kind of like worn a lot of different hats.
I was a model. You just sneak that in there on the side.
So, I'm a accountant, but a model by trade.
Oh,
so,
love it.
Yes. So yes, but it's one of those things that it's kind of, I've led like an oxymoron kind of life because not a lot of people enjoy Excel spreadsheets and painting. So, things like that. But with my life, halfway, through my journey in New York City, I launched a website. It was called Busy Wife, Busy Life. And it was my way to kind of brand myself as a on-camera talent. And little did I know at the time that blogging was its own business, or it was about to be, because this was back in like 2013, 14, when blogs were still very new. And I just, I started figuring it out, as I do with most things in life. That's a little Marie Folio. She always says that everything's figure outable. But I did. And so I started learning a lot of marketing skills from that. I started working with brands. I learned how to design websites. I learned about these marketing concepts that thankfully, I didn't realize was setting me up for like my next life, which is this life. And yes, now I work as a digital marketing consultant within the financial services industry, and I work remotely. And after my divorce, which was, a long, arduous process, I said to myself, I don't have to be anywhere So let me go be anywhere I want to be. And I took to the sky. People always laugh at me now. They're like, where do you live? I'm like, in the sky. You can deliver my mail to Delta Airlines. They'll make sure it gets to me.
Does
Or
that actually work?
no, it does not. It does
Darn.
not. It does not. It does not. But they do know, my normal seat number. They're like, oh, Miss Rankins, welcome to see you again. So I've made friends with flight attendants at this point. But yes, it's an unconventional life, the quote unquote digital nomad. I know a lot of people think that this is some like, bros, this just traveling the world. That's I think one of the thoughts of it, but it's really not. It's nomading is not, and it's not as I say backpacking or anything like that as you might envision. I travel around, I decide where I'm going to stay for a month or 2 months. And I kind of, as I say, set up shop there. And I build a community. I learn about the surroundings. I start immersing myself in the cultures. I make new friends. I join a gym. And I'm almost like chasing summer because I haven't really experienced a winter in many years, and I'm originally from Detroit, so I know what that's like.
Oh, no way. I didn't know
Yes.
that. Love
So
it.
it's a very different lifestyle, and a lot of people are, including my mother at times, are a little confused. But it's very, I would say, fulfilling, especially because I'm living life on my terms. And I think a lot of people they can't say that for many reasons, whether it's, fear or just things that are confining them, or they just haven't figured out how to like cut the ties with things that, aren't making them happy or fulfilled.
Well, let's pause for a moment. Just in your own words, how would you define digital nomad and just give people like just the generic definition of what you are doing today?
I would say a digital nomad is someone who works remotely, who is not tied to any particular home base, that can work in any time zone that is conducive to their work schedule. And they travel either with a visa or without a visa, working within the visitor visa of that particular country. And and they literally go from place to place, and it may be 2 to 3 places a year. It could be 6 to 12. So it's really up to you and your schedule.
So tell me what your 2025 is going to look like. I know you've been in Central and South America this year, right?
Yes.
And so tell me where you've been and where you're going.
So I spent the first quarter of the year in Buenos Aires. And then I did a little detour to Mexico City, which is amazing, by the way. I'm spending the summer in Europe. I will probably be returning to Mexico City in the fall. And then I'm hoping to go to Cape Town for winter. So yes, that's
That
that's
time zone is going to be a toughie, but it
well, it's
sounds
actually
amazing.
it's the same as Europe. Like honestly,
Okay.
it's just yeah, so it's straight down. So as long as I'm a night owl, and it
Yes.
works for me. So, I've been on calls before. People are like, what time is it? I'm like 10:30 p.m. They're like, is that fine? I'm like, yes, dinner just started here. So like
I love it. How did you make that? So I know you had the desire to, kind of let's rearrange my life based on the terms that I find desirable. How did you actually figure out how to do this? Because the logistics sound like a challenge to me. Like you're figuring out a living arrangement for a period of time. You're not just showing up in hotels, I'm assuming. So how did you get the nuts and bolts?
well, so I will say that so I was I did win a contest couple years ago that did give me a lot of hotel points. So I did start out like that, but that was not sustainable for long term. But I will say what I do is I did my research. Surprisingly, there's a very large community, and there's a lot of resources out there. So I started doing research. I started figuring out, okay, where is going to be affordable to actually get an Airbnb or a short-term rental. I started, looking at flights, trying to decide, what makes the most sense in regards to flying places, how long. I said maybe this is the strategic spreadsheet side of me with budgeting and whatnot. But and then a lot of, honestly, other than places like, Switzerland and France and parts of Japan, I guess, the US has a larger, a higher cost of living than a lot of, all of South America and parts of Europe. So with regards to budgeting, it is a little easier when you are traveling. It was just funny. This one woman, she met me and she called me the richest homeless person she knew. And,
And you didn't mind that? You weren't
no,
offended?
I looked at her like she was ridiculous because I'm like, I'm not homeless. I don't have I'm unhoused at the moment, but it's not as if I'm living on the street. So yeah, so I mean, I pick these Airbnbs, I decide, and then sometimes you can, and there's what you can negotiate with the Airbnb host. If you're staying for a period of time because they want their place rented, they want someone to take care of it. If they know you're professional and you're going to
Mhm.
take care of a place, you ask for a discount. And the worst anyone can always say is no. So, and then you lean onto a network, and there's a lot of, especially on Facebook, and I know people can be anti-Facebook, but it has a large group of, especially women. There's like a lot of women international groups. There's a group called like Girls Gone International, and like you add a city, and there's a group of women in that city who are expats. There's generally women in, and then these women are happy to help, to give advice, questions, to meet up for coffees, for drinks, to be friends. And you would be surprised how many people are just willing to be a part of a community because there's a lot of like-minded, souls out there who are doing the same thing, and they know what it feels like to be alone, and they want to survive, provide that support.
Are those groups where you're going to establish a community when you get there? Because I'm just amazed. If I landed in a new city for a month, I'd probably, you know, hopefully I'd know 2 people, but I'm just not, I don't have the muscle memory of establishing new networks that quickly. How are you feeling comfortable in the communities where you're getting experience that's not just, like, I don't know, the other tourists that, arrive into party each week?
Well, I am a little outgoing, so this might not be for, if you are a total introvert, then this might be not the lifestyle for you. So generally what I do is I will go on the networks prior to me arriving. I post a photo, I post a little blurb about myself, and I say, hey, I'll be here for, X amount of days or X amount of weeks or months or whatnot. Would love to meet up. These are my hobbies and interests. And you would be surprised. There'll be 10, 15 people like, oh my God, I'm here at the same time. Because generally these nomads are, there's calendars that we kind of, there's this unknown, unspoken calendar that we kind of follow. And people are just ready to say, I would love to meet up. Yes, I love working out. I love board games, or I love, I'm a big coffee enthusiast. There's people who would literally like to do whatever it is that you're generally posting. And it's very easy to make these connections. And like you said, and these are like-minded women, you feel safe. There's no men in these groups and whatnot. So it feels like a safe space. I had a whole crew of individuals in Argentina. We had a weekly brunch that we went to. It was 4 of us. And these women, some of them were from the US, some was from the UK. So, and these are international, travelers, and they were all there for about 6 weeks to 2, 3 months. And I met another, the girl I met in Argentina. We ended up meeting up in Mexico City. I'm meeting another friend in Europe later this summer. So it is really, if you think that you're alone, I guarantee you are not. That's a comforting feeling to have.
Well, I think this is so interesting. I have a client that we've talked about potentially relocating internationally. And one of the concepts I introduced is it doesn't have to be a decision where you literally just make a commitment for your whole entire life and leave. This is a great way to test the waters for trying out different places, even potentially if you'd like a second residence, figuring out before you commit, things like that.
Exactly. And a lot of countries, especially I know, I believe Spain and Portugal, they have like a non-revenue visa. So if you are retired and you're trying to just try a new place, you can get a visa to go there and not work as long as you're not making any income and you're living off of your current assets. So I mean, they're encouraging this kind of travel. So it is becoming a lot easier to take advantage of these opportunities, these visas, and really explore a lifestyle that you might not have thought that you even wanted or was available to you.
Well, I want to ask a few like kind of financial planning related questions. First of all, I heard you say, and this is an important part of these decisions, you are thinking strategically in terms of budget. You are analyzing, how much, since you're working too, you're making, you're spending, and it's not just YOLO. Like I do think this is an important component is like you do still need for most people some constraints on what you spend versus what you make and things like that. How have you tackled that side of things to make sure that the math in terms
Yeah.
of
Well,
your
yes. Like,
choices?
I'm not girl mathing these trips. I'm actually mathing these trips. So yeah. So like I said, so as I look at these Airbnbs, some countries, like the UK, or sorry, Argentina and South America generally don't have taxes on their Airbnbs. When I go to Mexico City, there's almost a 15 to 20% tax on them. So I have to lower my budget in regards to what I'm spending, because I know that I'm going to be paying an extra $300-400 in tax that, I didn't anticipate. In Europe is they don't have tax. So it's certain things like that that I take into consideration. I look at flights, I look at eating costs and whatnot, and a lot of exchange rates, and whether or not it's better to pay with card or with cash or exchange all at once, or certain economies are a little more stable than others. So, so I take all of that into account. I do research. I'm like, how much is the normal, nomad spending on meals and whatnot? I look at I call it the cocktail, I look at cocktails and what is, if I go out to drink, how much is it for, a good cocktail? Is it $15, or can I get a good cocktail for $8? And then I can plan my weekend budget,
This is helpful.
as
Yes.
well. Yeah. So this information is available. And if you think about, I guarantee though, if you think about how much you're spending in the US, more than likely it is less. But I said, I love to cook. So I go to the grocery store, I'm buying necessities. I'm cooking for myself. I'm having yogurt in my normal routine in the morning. So, I'm literally doing the things that I would do had I been in the US, and it's still coming out to being cheaper. So, I mean, you have to take into account that you don't have to have homeowners insurance, car note, gas, things of that nature. And so when you get rid of a lot of these expenses, and a lot of these places, are very walkable. You take the metro. So you take into your transportation costs into consideration as well. So as you look at your full budget, you can still come out, especially if you live in a major US city, you will come out ahead.
I love it. One other thing you mentioned, insurances that you may not need, but how do you make sure that you're covered for medical care?
So I will say I'm living life on the edge because I have medical insurance in the US. I go to, I get all my checkups when I come back to the US. But surprisingly, I've had people who've had to go to the doctor out of the country. It's not as expensive. You're not going to get a bill for $20,000 if you need to call, an ambulance or go to a hospital. I see videos online. A woman literally had her bill. She had to go to the emergency room, get a test done. It was $181. So, even if you have some of these costs, they're not going to be outrageous. So, I mean, you kind of, I guess, have a little discretionary fund for things of that nature, the just in cases. And things I always realize that you can always come home. So if something is starting to go wrong, you can pack your things up and get back on a plane and go to, our medical services here in the
Yeah,
US.
so you're not uninsured. You're not purchasing international insurance in the
No,
places
that's just
as you
something
go.
I haven't done yet. I'm generally a very healthy person. I would say if you have health concerns, this might be something to consider as well. But and a lot of that's the thing too, though. A lot of countries you can walk into pharmacies and just buy
Mhm.
medication if something's wrong. So you can say, "Oh, I'm not feeling well," and you can buy stuff over the counter, so you don't necessarily have to go to a doctor to treat things as much as we do in the U.S.
Yeah, in many countries, pharmacists are actually the medical dispensers kind of
Exactly.
first.
Exactly.
That's super helpful. I
Yes.
think so. Probably half of you, well, a third of you are listening and thinking, no way, I'm here, this feels good. A third are listening, sign me up, I'm going. And I hope there's another portion of you that are listening and hearing that you don't need to benchmark your life to societal norms necessarily. I think that, especially in the age of social media, which you've capitalized upon and are actually teaching people how to live this life on social media, which we'll talk about in a moment. You created a different footprint or blueprint for yourself that, I think more and more we're pressured to be the same as everybody else and, have some societal norm that really no one has. And you have really been inquisitive of yourself to say, what brings me fulfillment, happiness, contentment? What could I take? What could I subtract and what could I add? What kind of lessons learned do you have from taking this leap that your mother may say, what the heck are you doing, Sherita? But then, others of us are like, oh my gosh, tell me more.
Well, it's almost like you have to think about your life, and I always say, what do you value? What's most important to you? And if you are leaning into the things that aren't, then I decided it was time to make a change. I looked at what I was able to do in the career that I had. Like I said, I was working remotely, and I know a lot of people are looking for were working remote. They were called to go back to the office. They may feel that they're chained to a desk and they're looking for other positions. But I was fortunate enough to be able to take my skill set, work in with a company and consult in a way that allowed me to prioritize, I say, living versus just working. Because in New York, I was at one point in New York, I had 3 jobs. I was a model, I was in the office, I was a waitress at the same time. And I was just, it's a lot. And then you kind of step back, and I know a lot of people, and I admire them. Even like my best friend, she has this amazing career and the C-suite job. And I love her for that. And I knew that that was not the life that I wanted to live. I didn't want my success tied to how many meetings I had in a day, how much I could be making for the company. And I just started looking at myself and trying to decide what makes me happy. What am I fulfilled doing? And when I wake up in the morning, I love my job. I love what I do. So I don't feel that it's taking away from the life that I want to live. I chose not to have any children. That was also a choice that I made. I know some women, that choice is made for them, but you have to deal with the cards that are dealt to you and for you. And I just decided to take advantage. And I would say the lesson that I've learned is that you're going to have people who doubt you. You're going to have those who question you, and you just have to be steadfast in your own decisions and know that if that these people are not paying your bills, they're not with you 24/7, and you have to live for yourself. And that's how and people are like, oh, I feel bad. I'm supposed to. No, you're supposed to be doing what brings you joy, to an extent, of course. Like I said, I work, I'm healthy, and all those things. And I think those are the most important, because life is short. And, and I also know that when you put off like these big trips and these big adventures until later in life, sometimes it's not promised to you. So
There's enough.
I prioritized doing the things that I can do now versus putting them off until later, when I'm supposed to be enjoying retirement. Like, so I just structured my life. And, who knows where this is going to lead me. I said, I won't be traveling forever, but I hope that I inspire women to kind of take a leap that might sound unconventional and do things, for them, because we support so many people, whether it's, at work. We are the multitasking queens. Generally, you ask a man, he can't even answer a question and write something down at the same time. So it's just, I love the life that I've built, and I hope that I inspire people to do the same if it's something they want to do.
Yeah, and the life that you build may be, a master garden. It doesn't have to be traveling the world. Everybody's
Exactly.
a little bit different, and it can be a little bit of everything, but nobody's going to stop your life and tell you now it's time to do the things that you would prefer to prioritize. And so I do think a financial planner engagement can be assistive, because our role is not to judge whether that what you desire is worthy of your pursuit. Our job is to help you achieve your aspirations, and also objectively tell you when there are, deficiencies or weaknesses or gaps in a game plan that might leave you, either your current or future self, vulnerable.
And it's like, what are your goals? Is it sustainable? Those
Right.
are like the questions that are asked and answered. And for me, especially, I said, coming out of a divorce, this was the most sustainable thing, because I wasn't ready to, set up shop, as I say, get all of these bills. I knew that I could be in control of how much money I was spending every month, live as lavish or as inexpensively as I chose at that time. And it gave me the flexibility of knowing that, I'm not tied down to something right now if I wasn't comfortable with, if I wasn't sure about my actual income or expenditures. It's a daunt. It said, from going from a marriage to a single life, it's a daunting thing. Restructuring, you went from sometimes splitting things to now everything falls on you. So you're just like, okay, how can I make this sustainable for me? And like I said, it's not about jumping on a plane and going around the world. It's whatever, maybe it's starting that business. Maybe it's, like you said, starting that garden. Maybe it's starting your Etsy shop. Like, whatever it is that you want to do, it's leaning into those fears and having that doubt of, can I, should I, and kind of just casting that aside and saying, yes, I can. And guess what? If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but you don't know unless you try. And that's always like my mindset, because I said, you don't have to do something forever, but if it's something you want to do, give it a try. You can always change your mind. Plans are always subject to change, is what I always say.
Yes, and progress over perfection. You don't have to overcommit. And I think just while we're on that topic of divorce, I think so many people try to recreate the house and like, how can I make everything the same when everything has changed? And there is this period of time post divorce, during and post divorce, that is highly disrupted, where, decision making may be diminished. Just, you're making a commitment for how you think you're going to feel post divorce, that it may or may not feel right for you after you've gotten, kind of all of the disruption out of the way. So that fragile period, tender period post divorce, is one where people often try to set a table that isn't one they really want to be sitting at.
Exactly. You shouldn't make long-term decisions when you're in a temporary mindset. And I
Hmm.
do believe that. And like I say, a lot of emotions go into life changes, and trying to set yourself up, and feeling the pressure of, okay, I need to do this now. I need to do this. No, I'm like, I realized that I needed to relax. I needed to chill. I needed to be in a space that wasn't going to be demanding. I was like, there was no way. And heck, I was going back to New York, because that's like, it's like, oh, just the nice, calm city of New York. No. So, said no one. So, you have to find the space for yourself to grow, to really, if you said, if you're thinking about doing something life change, or something large, or something big that's different from where you are, be in a space that allows you to flourish in that, whether it's around a network of individuals who support you, or like I said, even if you're lowering your expenses so you have room to do that. The hardest thing to try to do is to build things when you're doing everything else at the same time, because I'm not sure if you said, I think you have said this before, that you can have it all, but just not all at the same time.
Yeah.
So you got to make decisions sometime on what is important and what you're going to do at that moment.
Yeah, and one of my favorite sayings is, you can have anything but not everything. So, there does need to be some discernment. Is there anything that you feel like you miss the most, or, like, I love the aggregate of my life, but I got to this city and it was the worst, or anything like that?
I said, I've been smart. I said, I've done my research to where, every time before I get on a plane, I think to myself, what are you doing? And then I get there and I'm like, this is amazing. So, and then I'm always sad, like, to leave. And my friends were like, you have said you could live everywhere. I was like, no, no, no. So I just think I don't have any regrets right now. I think the only thing I would have regretted if I didn't try this out. And I almost stopped traveling last year because I felt like I should, and I realized I wasn't ready. So I'm going until the feeling, the spirit no longer moves me, as I would say. And we'll just see. Like I said, I will see where we're going. Life, like always, sends signs and opportunities your way, and you just have to be ready to receive them. So this is the space I'm in right now, and like I said, we'll see what next year brings. Yeah.
Well, a couple lessons learned from our conversation. First of all, I think everyone has permission to grow as a person, grow in their relationship with their values and their self, and what brings purpose and meaning to your life. And I think sometimes we forget about that. Sometimes everything's external. It's kind of happening to us. It's our to-do list. And so I really hear from you, that growth mindset, which I do think, kind of brings fulfillment. And also, you know, whatever you're doing today isn't always permanent. So you have the power to both dream, and then you just described, I don't know if I'll always be doing this, but this is right for me right now. And I
Exactly.
think that is a really powerful way to build experiences and a journey that it is right for someone that leaves you without regrets. And so, if anyone feels inspired based on this conversation, it doesn't have to be that you're, hopping continents all the time. Although it may be. I
It may
love that
be. I mean,
for you.
it's actually it's a more it's affordable decision at this rate. And like I
I
said,
mean,
I
I am
don't.
so ready, but I've got this office that I also love, that brings me a lot of joy, as well as, tweens and teens that are a little more placed here. But I just love the story of what you're doing.
Children need routines and stability. So I, I do know people who are doing this with kids at a very young age, who are under the
Mhm.
age of 5, which is definitely doable as well. And then they've been traveling. They decided to settle in a different country and long term, and then have them go to school there. The kids become more bilingual. So I mean, there's different ways for everyone. I'm not saying you have to just be this single woman. I mean, I know people who travel with their partner. So it's there are couples that do this as a, as a way to explore. And it's just it's an unconventional life, but it's one that, is for me desirable. And as I said, I realized after having a network of people that I'm meeting in these different cities that it's desirable to many. So like I said, don't think you are alone, but I had to pare down a lot of things, the things that I travel with and things I thought were important.
Yeah, like what's
uh
the weight of your luggage when you're going to when you
I
head
am,
to
I am,
Europe?
I am 50 pounds. I'm 51.2 sometimes. So
Oh my
yes.
gosh.
So it's like there's
I don't know if I
that
can do
reel
that.
that when you check your bag and I know what it feels like now, and I drop it on the scale and I'm like, boom. Like, so yeah. So
Well, I'm
yeah. So
glad it's always summer because I would really struggle if it was winter.
exactly, though. It's always summer. You think about the items you're going to pack, and you have a washer and dryer, and you have to think to yourself, I don't know these people. I don't care if they see me in the same outfit time and time again. So, it's not like that either. And you can always buy things. That says sometimes when you're traveling, you can buy things that you can't get at home. So that's great as well. Yeah. So I travel. I say some people travel a little lighter than me, but I have my bag. I do have a little carry on. I always have my computer. And yeah, so it's just I make it work. It's smart packing and decide, I say this wasn't about fashion, but it's like having a color scheme. You're either going to be like neutrals or blacks and whites with some splashes. So this way you don't have to bring everything. You can bring outfits that mix and match and whatnot, which is also economical. And it also, that helps the budget. You're not sitting in Spain ordering on Amazon either. So it's like,
Yeah.
I sit here and I've like think about every time I come back, I'm like, click, 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 order, and how much money I'm saving because I realize I don't need anything else. I'm good. I'm good. Yeah. So either way,
I
it's
love it.
it's it's a savings all around. But
Well, your message has been that if this is something you're desiring, you're not alone. You just need to find the community. You are teaching people about the life of a digital nomad. Tell people where they can find your content and your lessons learned.
yeah, so you can find me on Instagram. That's my most popular platform. I'm at Sherita Janielle. That's Janielle, Janielle. There will be a link in the show notes. And then I'll also, within my link in bio, I have a link to my digital nomad blueprint, which is a 38-page comprehensive guide to getting started on this journey. And I want to help you think about the mindset, find remote work, where to go, how to date on. We didn't talk about that either.
Oh yeah, that's a whole entire episode.
Maybe we'll do a follow-up on dating and the economics of that, and travel.
Please, I would love to, especially like post-divorce. Let's do
Yes,
that
yes.
episode.
So I have all of that information in the guide. There's also worksheets available that have templates for trying to find consulting work, remote work as well. I really, I don't want to gatekeep anything. And like I said, if you have any questions, if you just reach out to me, I answer every single one of my DMs personally as well. I also have some information on my website too at modernwomanagenda.com. I've written some articles about traveling and my experiences as well. There's over 400 articles on the site as well because it's shifted from busy wife to that. I also have recipes. So it's a little bit, it's a busy woman's guide in the modern world. So we'll put it like that. So yes.
Well, keep being amazing and keep being yourself, Sharita. And also, since we have the woman behind the scenes on camera today, thank you so much for all the work that you do to make the Women's Money Wisdom podcast a success. We really appreciate you.
Thank you so much. It was funny when you asked me to be on it. I was just like, I don't do anything financial. And then I was thinking, but my life is. So yes.
Yes, it sure is. And this is exactly the conversations that we need to have. Not everything is a spreadsheet,
Yes.
although sometimes it is. But these conversations really, to me, are so impactful. And you would be surprised how often, I'm going to be bringing this conversation up in my conversations with clients as well. So thank you for sharing.
Well, I appreciate you and all the work you do to help women in the Dexter and just in the whole online community as well. So thank you so much, Melissa.
Have a great week. Thank you for listening to the Women's Money Wisdom Podcast. If you found value in this episode, the best way you can support the podcast is to forward an episode to a friend or leave a review. Go to pearlplan.com and the podcast link to get all the resources and links mentioned.